how do we want to break this down as far as our predictions? And it'll be Hank Kingsley if I agree with you. Hey now. Or it'll be Tracy Morgan if I disagree. That's crazy. And if you're really off base, it might be
you suck. Yeah, jackass.
Got from Happy Gilmore. So,
by the way, how was he allowed to do that and not thrown off the golf course?
I don't know.
Cinnamon.
I don't know. One time going to a golf event, I went to the Knoxville Open, and me and my buddy didn't have anything better to do, didn't understand what was going on, so we just laid down in a sand pit, took our shirts off, and got some sun. And then suddenly the ball was hit into the sand pit, and everybody started coming our way, so we had to run away. That's all I know about.
Oh, my God.
That's all I know about watching golf. I was 18 and got passes.
Well, I know I don't watch it either, but I know enough that you're not allowed to heckle the golfers as they're playing. It's not like other sports. You can't heckle them. Like, you're told to be quiet.
Yes. Which don't get me and Jimmy started on that, because I think you should be able to cheer the whole time, and people would get used to it. But anyway.
I think it'd make golf more fun.
All right, here we go. Predictions. So how do you want to break this down, Caleb? You take the lead. You've got my predictions, and I'm going to let you lead off. So we're going game by game in our predictions, and we're going to determine who's right and wrong, and we're going to keep track of this, and I will be able to show Caleb what a great predictor of wins and losses I am. I'm really not. Predicting every game on Tennessee's football schedule. Let's start out with Virginia. Who you got winning that football game now that Tony Elliott has given the Vols some bulletin board material, because apparently he was going to be hired to be not only the head coach, but the athletic director and the president of the university. And that's not the case. Tennessee's going to win that game, right?
Yes, Tennessee's going to win that game.
Austin P.
Real tough one.
Hey now. They're going to win that
trying
game.
to figure that
They're
out.
going to win that game. Florida.
We're both wins, but I think Tennessee's going to struggle because it's a night game on the road. And you enlighten me on this. Practicing in the morning works against Tennessee in that situation.
Totally agree. It's your body clock. I saw it on the flip side for a lot of years when Tennessee practiced in the afternoon. They hated noon games. They did not want to play noon games. But I think Tennessee does get the win. Hey now. All right. You take me through the rest of the schedule.
All right. One of the toughest games on their schedule, funny enough. UTSA, the Roadrunners. By the way, my high school was the Roadrunners. And
my rival high school was the Roadrunners, Austin East.
Really?
Yeah, I think Tennessee wins that game, but that's not going to be like an Austin Peay showing up. That's not an easy one. But I got Tennessee winning that game. You?
Yeah, I got them winning fairly comfortably.
All right. Who's up next?
South Carolina.
Hey now. I think that's a big time revenge game. I think Tennessee wins that game easily.
I do too. I think Tennessee absolutely blows them out of the water. I think Tennessee is helped by the fact that, and when we get to our SEC standings next, I will explain this, but they're helped by the fact that South Carolina has a horrible offensive coordinator. But yeah, I think Tennessee is going to blow them out. So these are like the two tough ones so there's South Carolina, and then there's Texas A&M right after that.
This is the one that I struggled with a little bit. And my picks, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, are going to be boring, but I'm going to explain why. So I'm taking Tennessee to win this, and here's the one reason why it ended up being not as difficult as it was initially, and that's because they have an off weekend to prepare for A&M. So I take Tennessee to beat the Aggies, but probably in a closer game than you might think in Neyland Stadium. You?
Yep, I think Tennessee beats the Aggies. I think Texas A&M is going to be demoralized after losing to Alabama the week before, and because they're demoralized, Tennessee is going to catch them and just absolutely beat the brakes off them.
A&M's one of the toughest picks, I think, on Tennessee's schedule, and I agree with you. I think Tennessee wins the game. Hey now. But the reason it's difficult, if Bobby Petrino is able to provide some sort of structure to that offense and structure to that program, then suddenly they could be better than we think. On the flip side, if he and Jimbo Fisher, kind of like the Dave Clawson hire that Philip Fulmer made at offensive coordinator, if they don't see offense the exact same way, and only they know that as of mid to late August, then they could go south and be a bad team that comes to Neyland Stadium. I don't think they'll be just kind of in the middle for some reason. I think it's either going to go south or they're going to be better than we think.
I agree, and that's why I have them going south. And Dave, one of the things we forget about this is even if they're meshed X's and O's wise, you and I know, we know Jimbo Fisher was forced to hire Bobby Petrino and he didn't want to hire him. He did not want an offensive coordinator. How that's going to seep through to the players. I don't like to do the whole, how you are, where your mentality is for a game, but this is one of those where if you're a player, how can you mentally get yourself to play hard for these coaches when these coaches are at odds with each other?
If they are. And I think
they're at odds. I think Jimbo Fisher is like, I don't even care.
No, I think he's about ready to do an Ed Orgeron and ride off into the sunset. Alabama, guys, be disappointed with me. If you want, you can go ahead and say this.
You suck, you jackass.
I think that's a revenge game for Alabama. I think that Alabama wins that game. But I think it's very close, and it wouldn't stun me at all with the fact that they're going back to a ball control offense. If Tennessee makes a couple of big plays in the second half or fourth quarter and ends up winning the game, would not surprise me. In my mind, this is a 60-40% chance Alabama wins the game. It's very close. But I've got Tennessee slipping up against Alabama.
Yeah, I'm with you. Tennessee's going to lose to Alabama. And even though Alabama plays more ball control, I think what's going to happen this year, I think last year Alabama got caught kind of relying on Bryce Young to bail them out. And a lot of the other players who could have stepped up didn't. And I don't think you're going to see that this year. I think the same thing happened with 97 Tennessee, by the way. I think 97 Tennessee was better than 98 Tennessee. But I think 97 Tennessee, a lot of elite players were content to kind of let Peyton Manning carry them and bail them out when necessary. And then when 98 came and they realized they have to step up, they did a lot better. And then you saw it even more when Jamal Lewis went down. The rest of the offense was like, oh, we really got to step up. And I think you're going to see that with Alabama.
Yep. Kentucky. Now, this is one of those games. I'm going to ask you at the end which win you picked for Tennessee that you don't feel great about. Kentucky is in Lexington. Alabama's going back to this ball control offense. They're always physical, but you would think they would want to be even more physical than they were last year when they were more of a spread look and have been since Lane Kiffin. I think this is a very challenging football game and not a gimme at all. I could see Tennessee being just a 3.5 point favorite, maybe 2.5 point favorite. All lines brought to you by Zen Sports as I predict ahead. Use the promo code HOOKED to get more cash back. But Kentucky at Lexington, October the 28th. Who are you picking here? I'm picking Tennessee, but we're going to go back over the ones I don't feel incredibly confident about, and this would be one.
Yeah, I'm picking Tennessee, and I'm right where you are. Kentucky, not only is the game in Lexington, Kentucky's coming off a bye that week, and Tennessee might be coming off a hangover at Alabama. We don't know. I think what's going to help is there was a lot of talk last year about it, and look, I thought Tennessee was in danger of struggling with Kentucky last year. I think what they did that was smart was that's when they brought up the black uniforms and did the whole house. They found ways to keep the players motivated because Georgia was the next week. And I actually thought Tennessee was in danger of looking ahead of Kentucky to Georgia. They found little gimmicks to keep them motivated and focused for the Kentucky game. Being at Kentucky this year, I think the flow of the season up to that point will have the players conditioned to take Kentucky seriously because I think Kentucky is going to be good, really good leading up to that point. I think Tennessee will have refocused, having lost to Alabama, realizing they still have a lot to play for. They don't have to look ahead to anything because of the next game that we're going to get to. So I think because of that, they beat Kentucky.
Yep. UConn next game win. Agreed.
Win.
Yep. Missouri, that's in Columbia. You know what I think about Missouri, and Missouri fans now know what I think about Missouri. So maybe as much with my heart as my head. I just don't like that program. I got Tennessee winning. Hey now.
I got Josh Heupel winning. Josh Heupel's never going to let anybody ever overlook Missouri. He wanted that Missouri job badly in 2020, and they gave it to Eli Drinkwitz. And so, yeah, Josh Heupel is not going to let him. But at Missouri with Georgia a week later, Missouri was very dangerous last year, and they have everybody back. To quote Lee Corso, closer than the experts think.
Okay. Now, what about Georgia? Is that closer the following week than what the experts think? I've got Tennessee losing that game, but I haven't seen Carson Beck in action, so I'm not down on Tennessee in that game. I just would have to pick Georgia at this point based off what they've done, but my prediction could change by the end of September.
Tennessee's going to win that game.
Whoa, look at him. Look at him.
Tennessee is beating Georgia. And I will tell you guys why right now.
I'm your Huckleberry.
All right, why? Why? Tell me.
Georgia, we saw this last year, was the most go through the motions undefeated team I have ever seen play football. I mean, it was one of those where it didn't seem like they wanted to play every week. To quote a former president, I think they're getting sick of winning, which happens to some teams sometimes. And they're going to get sick of winning throughout this season because they're going to beat everybody on their schedule in September and October because they'll fall out of bed and beat every team by 20 points. November's going to come. They got Ole Miss the week before Tennessee. I think if Tennessee doesn't beat them, Ole Miss could. So don't sleep on Ole Miss potentially beating Georgia. But going to Knoxville, Tennessee with the SEC East on the line, Georgia being such a go-through-the-motions program at the time, and Tennessee playing – guys, this is going to be the biggest November home game Tennessee football has ever played. Y'all heard that here first.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The biggest November – yeah. Yes, the biggest November home game Tennessee has ever played. Try to find a bigger one.
You got my thinking face on.
I'm your Huckleberry.
I think you're right. Yeah, I'm trying to go back. What was that Notre Dame game in the early 90s?
That was in November, but this is going to be bigger.
This is an SEC
with the SEC
game,
on the line.
Yeah, I mean,
and a potential national title on the line, and an SEC title on the line.
Yeah, this is bigger.
It's bigger.
Yep.
Last time a game was this big was Kentucky 1950 with Bear Bryant going to Knoxville.
Nasty history by my man Caleb Calhoun.
This is the biggest November home game, and Tennessee fans are going to, the crowd is going to be electric. Georgia won't be as motivated as they were this past year because they had it. They wanted to humiliate Tennessee after all the talk Tennessee did last year. And I'm telling you, Tennessee is going to take it because of all of that.
I am super boring because we've got them beating Vanderbilt, I'm sure, in the last game of the season. So I'm super boring. I've got Tennessee 10-2. Sneaking into the college football playoff with 2 losses and not having to play in the SEC championship game. So I'm boring, but I want to ask you before we get to predicting the SEC standings, and I guess I've kind of given my mind away a little bit. What game that you picked Tennessee to win do you feel the least good about?
Well, before I get there, since you gave away that you got them going to the college football playoff with 2 losses and losing, you have them finishing 10-3, losing in the playoff.
Oh, yes, I wasn't counting the playoff. Go ahead.
I've got Tennessee going 12-2. They're going to go 11-1 in the regular season. They're going to lose the SEC championship game, and then they're going to go back to the Orange Bowl, a New Year's Six Bowl this year, but not a playoff game, and they're going to win the Orange Bowl for a second straight year to finish 12-2. Because the highest ranked SEC team not in the playoff is tied to the Orange Bowl this year since the Sugar Bowl's in the playoff.
Okay.
So
Miami's not a bad place to go. That would be a good season. Some people wouldn't be happy if Tennessee didn't make a step in the college football playoff, but that's still 2 heck of back seasons back to back. I will tell you the one I don't feel best about, or I feel worse about than any of the others that I picked Tennessee to win, and that is Kentucky. With Kentucky, I think they're going to be a better football team because they're not going to hitch their wagon of Will Levis. And it's the week after you play Alabama, and you're usually banged up, and it's in Lexington. So out of the victories that I picked for Tennessee, I've got Kentucky as the one that I feel least good about.
Well, because I went out on a limb, mine's pretty obvious on which one I feel least good about, and it would be the Georgia one. If you had to tell me Tennessee's going to lose one of the games I picked them to win, it would be Georgia is where I would go.
But I mean,
if
I got you. Okay, so you picked them. I got you. I follow.
Yeah, since I picked them to beat Georgia. But if we throw out the Georgia one, I'm probably with you on Kentucky. It's Kentucky or Florida to me. I think Florida's bad. I just think that being a night game is a little scary. And if Florida can somehow sneak a win against Utah, I mean, then they're going to be real. If Florida beats Utah, how raucous is that stadium going to be when Tennessee comes to town, Dave? It's going to be pretty raucous.